At 10:42 a.m., west of Moscow, the tree-lined outskirts of Kubinka II lay under a thin veil of autumn haze. Russian radar stations scanned lazily across the afternoon sky, operators half relaxed, the hum of their consoles a constant background lullaby. Nothing unusual, no alerts, no movement.
Then everything changed in an instant. Without warning, 4 squadrons of Ukrainian Su-25s burst over the horizon at treetop height, engines screaming, wings slicing the air just above the forest canopy. Their entry was masked by electronic silence, no early radar signature, no warning tones. At the same moment, a storm of GMLRS rockets arced across the sky from over 50 kilometers away. The first impacts struck ammunition depots, radar stations, and Buk M3 missile launchers guarding the outer belt of Kubinka II.
The calm of the Russian frontier shattered. What had been a quiet afternoon turned into a furnace of fire and steel. This was no probing raid. It was a deep strike incursion, a coordinated preemptive assault targeting one of Russia's most critical command centers.
As the initial barrage landed, Ukrainian artillery teams launched a second wave, the air filled with thunderous ripples as 6-round salvos descended with surgical precision. Each rocket's warhead was designed to obliterate light armor and trench fortifications. Russian BNP-2s and dispersed SAM crews were caught mid-maneuver, engulfed in detonations that rolled through the tree lines like a storm.
Moments later, the ground offensive began. From the southern approach, a combined mechanized column surged forward. Leopard 2 A4 main battle tanks led the charge, their cannons elevated and scanning, while waves of Ukrainian motorized infantry on dirt bikes darted between trees and ditches. It wasn't brute force, it was speed, coordination, and deception. Autonomous mine-clearing robots, guided by infrared beacons, had already carved a safe lane through minefields and anti-tank traps. The Leopard tanks thundered through the corridor, followed by the roaring swarm of bikes, each one carrying scouts armed with shoulder-launched rockets and digital tablets displaying live terrain feeds from drones above. Russian artillery reacted too late. BM-27 Uragan rocket launchers deep within Kubinka II's sector began counter-barrage, 220mm rockets screaming overhead. The explosions landed in the empty assembly zones Ukraine had abandoned minutes earlier. The offensive was moving too fast to track. At command posts inside Kubinka II, Russian officers scrambled. Alarms blared, communications spiked, orders collided. Realizing the scale of the strike, the Russian Air Force responded. From Machkovo airfield, 4 Su-30SM fighters roared into the sky, banking low through radar shadows, racing to intercept the Ukrainian Su-25s still prowling the battle zone. Within minutes, they made contact. Flares streaked across the sky as R-73 heat-seeking missiles launched, locking onto the glowing exhausts of the Su-25s. The Ukrainian pilots broke hard, dumping countermeasures and diving into tree-hugging maneuvers. But Ukraine wasn't alone in the air. 18 miles away, hidden behind forest ridges, a Patriot PAC-3 battery came alive. Its radar locked on to the inbound Su-30s. Seconds later, one missile roared skyward at Mach 4, forcing the Russian formation to scatter. One fighter banked violently and escaped. Another was caught in the explosion radius, shredded by fragments as it tumbled from the sky.
The dogfight ended as quickly as it began. Air superiority tilted back toward Ukraine. Above, a network of Ukrainian drones, Bayraktar TB2s, and long-endurance recon UAVs mapped the chaos in real time. The airspace became a layered war zone. Drones above 10,000 feet, strike jets weaving through the middle, and anti-aircraft fire crisscrossing below.
Every radar beam, Every tracer, every comm ping was part of the storm. As the aerial battle stabilized, the fight shifted into another invisible domain, the electromagnetic spectrum. From deeper in the Russian rear, Borisogledsk-2 electronic warfare vehicles began jamming GPS frequencies and drone uplinks. Within minutes, the Ukrainian GMLRS targeting data faltered, feed delays appeared, and drone telemetry glitched. The battlefield's digital map fragmented into noise.
But Ukraine had anticipated this move. From concealed positions, Ukrainian ECW counter-jamming vehicles activated, broadcasting narrowband signals that carved signal corridors through the jamming fog. Invisible lanes through which drone commands and targeting packets could pass. These slender corridors kept the advancing armor units linked to artillery and recon feeds, allowing coordination to resume even amid total electronic warfare.
The battle was now being fought not only in mud and fire, but in frequencies and milliseconds. At 5:18 p.m., Ukraine's forward spear reached Kubinka II's outer perimeter. What had been a fluid advance now transformed into brutal, close-quarters urban forest combat.
Russian BMP-2s burst from camouflaged revetments, cannons blazing, pinning Ukrainian scouts in shallow ditches. From hidden positions, T-72B3 tanks maneuvered for a flank, their engines growling through smoke and shattered trees.
But the Leopard 2A4s were ready. Their turrets swung as one, angled behind a ridge. 2 APF-SDS rounds fired in rapid succession, striking the lead Russian tank in its lower hull. It erupted into flames, the shockwave echoing through the woods.
As shells traded across the tree line, Russian Spetsnaz units of the 45th Brigade emerged from bunkers and trenches. Two-man fire teams equipped with RPG-29s and thermal optics. They darted through the ruins, firing from the shadows. Ukrainian infantry countered with suppressive fire and grenade drones, advancing under the cover of smoke and shattered foliage.
Overhead, the electronic fog finally began to lift. A returning Bayraktar TB2 reacquired its signal and climbed above the chaos, relaying coordinates directly to Ukrainian artillery. Moments later, a coordinated strike began. Not against tanks or trenches, but against Kubinka II's command center itself. 4 INS-guided rockets slammed into the roof of the underground bunker complex. The explosion ripped open the communications hub, collapsing antennas and severing the local command grid. The fortress's heartbeat, its data, its orders, its eyes, went dark. The blast reverberated through the Russian defense network. Officers shouted into dead radios. Field units were suddenly blind, leaderless, and fragmented. Desperate to regain control, Russian High Command authorized a retaliatory deep strike. 2 Iskander-M ballistic missiles launched from 250 kilometers away, streaking into the upper atmosphere before plunging toward Ukraine's rear staging area. But Ukraine's air defense web was awake. Multiple Patriot PAC-3 systems, deployed in overlapping rings, locked on. 2 interceptors screamed skyward. The first missile disintegrated mid-air in a blinding flash. The second veered off course under intense jamming interference before tearing apart from sheer G-force stress. At nearly the same moment, a Buk M3 launcher hidden within Kubinka's interior fired a salvo of surface-to-air missiles at the returning Bayraktar. The drone dove sharply, dodging into the electronic haze. One missile exploded harmlessly in the distance. High above, a Russian 4-post R recon UAV tried to re-establish targeting coordinates, but never made it. A short-range Ukrainian manpad locked on, fired, and the drone disintegrated in a ball of flame over the forests. The Russian counterstrike collapsed, piece by piece. By 6:27 p.m.,
The battlefield had quieted, not in peace, but in exhaustion. The last remnants of organized Russian defense fell back deeper into the sector, their lines fractured, their command chains severed. Ukraine seized the moment.
Under covering artillery, GMLRS batteries unleashed one final precision volley, tearing through hardened shelters and tunnel entrances. Mortar teams closed the distance, and assault squads advanced through smoke and fire, clearing bunkers one by one. Inside, a handful of Spetsnaz operators fought to the end.
But the final blow didn't come from a tank shell or a missile. It came from silence. A single guided round struck the last standing antenna array on the roof of the subterranean command bunker. It snapped the line that connected Kubinka 2 to Moscow's defense net. Every Russian comms channel in the region went dark.
Kubinka 2 was no longer a fortress. It was a black hole on the map, cut off, blind, and defeated.
As smoke rolled across the battered tree line, the battlefield fell eerily quiet. A lone Ukrainian dirt bike, its seat still warm, stood upright on charred soil. Nearby, a wounded Russian soldier dragged himself to shade beneath a shattered wall. A white cloth fluttered weakly beside him. Not surrender, but survival.
Because in modern war, victory isn't measured by what you destroy, but by what you disconnect. Ukraine hadn't just broken a line, it had broken Moscow's reflex. And in that silence, the future of the front shifted once again.